My son's name is Alexander Ashford Whitmore III. We call him Ash. Or we used to before. His fiancée decided Alexander sounded more distinguished. He was born into legacy, old money, older expectations. The Whitmore name opens doors in Boston, New York, London. His grandfather built an empire. His father expanded it. Ash was supposed to inherit it all. I was the perfect mother for a boy like that. Vassar graduate, junior league president, museum board member. I knew which forks to use at state dinners and which families were worth knowing. I raised Ash to be impeccable. Private tutors, Phillips Exeter, Yale. He learned 3 languages, played lacrosse, summered in Martha's Vineyard. Every advantage, every opportunity, every door already open. When he got engaged to Victoria Chamberlain last spring, I wept with relief. The Chamberlains were exactly right. Old Charleston money, impeccable breeding, a girl who understood our world. Victoria's mother, Eleanor, and I had been acquaintances for years. Through various charity circuits. It felt destined. Ash called me the day after he proposed. "Mother, I need you," he said. "Victoria wants the perfect wedding. Will you help?" I should have heard the warning in those words. Victoria wants. Not we want. Planning began immediately. Not at our home, at the Chamberlain estate in Charleston. Eleanor insisted, and I didn't argue. She was the mother of the bride after all. The first meeting was in their drawing room, overlooking the gardens that had been featured in Architectural Digest twice. Victoria arrived late, which I later learned was intentional. She liked making entrances. She was beautiful in that calculated way, blonde, refined, never a hair out of place. She kissed my cheek and called me Catherine, not Mrs. Whitmore. Familiar, but not warm. "I'm so grateful you're helping," she said, settling into the chair Eleanor had clearly reserved for her. "Alexander says you have impeccable taste." The way she said my son's full name, elongating each syllable, felt like a correction to everyone who still called him Ash. We discussed venues. Victoria wanted the Charleston Yacht Club for the ceremony, the Gibby's Museum for the reception. Both required connections we had. I made calls that afternoon. Dates were secured within hours. That's what the Whitmore name does. "Your family is so well connected," Victoria said when I reported back. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We're very fortunate." Fortunate. Like she'd won a lottery, not agreed to marry my son. The guest list became our first battleground. I suggested 250, intimate by our standards, but large enough to honor both families' obligations. Victoria smiled that careful smile and said, "Let's aim for 180. More exclusive." Exclusive meant cutting people. My college roommate. My late mother's closest friend. Business associates my husband had known for decades. "They're not really family," Victoria explained, her pen hovering over names I'd written. "This should be about the people who matter most." I deferred. Bride's preference, everyone knows that. But when I saw the revised list, something cold settled in my stomach. Victoria had added 37 of her own. Guests, sorority sisters, friends from her junior league chapter in Charleston, cousins I'd never heard mentioned. Meanwhile, my additions kept getting reconsidered. Ash, when I brought it up, sighed. "Mother, Victoria's handling the details. You know how particular she is." Particular. That's what we called it. Not controlling. Not manipulative. Particular. Eleanor watched these exchanges with a small smile, saying nothing. She didn't need to. Victoria was her daughter, trained in the same silent warfare that women in families like ours master early. I'd been trained too once. I'd just forgotten I might need those weapons. Against my own son's wife. The dress shopping was scheduled without me. I learned about it from my husband, Richard, who'd been copied on an email. Victoria and Eleanor are going to Kleinfeld next Tuesday, he mentioned over breakfast. "Did you decide not to go?" I hadn't decided anything. I hadn't been invited. When I texted Ash, he called back. Immediately, apologetic. "Mother, I'm so sorry. Victoria thought you were busy with the Foundation Gala. We can reschedule." We didn't reschedule. Victoria found her dress that day. A custom Verawang that cost more than my first car. She sent me a photo with the message, "Wish you could have been here next time." There wasn't a next time. The dress was perfect, the decision final. I swallowed it. I'd been swallowing things for months. The venue choices I disagreed with. The caterer she selected after dismissing my suggestions. The way she'd started calling our summer house in the vineyard the cottage, like our family's 50-year legacy was quaint. But I was still the groom's mother. Still essential. Still needed for 100 small decisions. About flowers, music, seating arrangements. I told myself I was being sensitive. That Victoria was just stressed. That's what we do. We explain away our own erasure until it's too late. 4 months before the wedding, Victoria requested a meeting. Just the two of us, she said. Lunch at Husk, her favorite Charleston restaurant. I drove down from Boston 3 hours of rehearsing boundaries I needed to set. I would be gracious but firm. This was my son's wedding too. Victoria was already seated when I arrived, looking serene in cashmere and pearls. We ordered. She asked about Richard's recent merger, my work with the Children's Hospital Foundation. Surface conversation, the kind we'd perfected. Then over main courses she leaned forward. "Catherine, I need to discuss something delicate." Her voice dropped, confidential. "Eleanor and I have been talking. We're concerned about the optics of the wedding party." Optics. That word should have made me stand up and leave. Instead, I asked what she meant. "Well," she said carefully, "your family's side is smaller. Less balanced. We have 7 bridesmaids. You have 3 groomsmen confirmed. It looks uneven in photos." I explained that Ash's closest friends were scattered. One in London, one dealing with a family emergency. These things happen. Victoria nodded sympathetically. Of course. Which is why Eleanor suggested something brilliant. What if we just do immediate family? Immediate family. I should have seen it coming. The new plan was elegant, Victoria explained. Intimate. A small wedding party, just Victoria's sister as maid of honor, just Ash's younger brother, James as best man. It simplifies everything, she said. More focus on the couple, less stress about coordinating large groups. It also meant eliminating my nephew, my godson, the son of my oldest friend who'd been promised a role. I pointed this out gently. Victoria touched my hand across the table. "I know. It's disappointing. But don't you think intimate is more sophisticated? More refined?" Refined. The word we used when we meant exclusive. When we meant other people weren't quite enough. I agreed because saying no felt impossible. The wedding was in Charleston, in her territory. She held all the power, the venue relationships, the vendor connections, my son's attention. I was the groom's mother from Boston, increasingly irrelevant to the narrative Victoria was constructing. When I told Richard that night, he barely looked up from his laptop. Victoria knows what she wants. Let her have her day. Her day. Not our son's day. Not our family's day. Hers. I poured a glass of wine and stood at our bedroom window, looking out at the Charles River, feeling something I couldn't name yet. Something that felt like grief. The invitations went out without my approval. I learned this when my sister called, confused. "Catherine, did you see the wording?" I hadn't. Victoria and Eleanor had handled the printer directly. When I finally saw one, my stomach dropped. "Mrs. Eleanor Chamberlain requests the honor of your presence at the marriage of her daughter Victoria Grace to Mr. Alexander Ashford Whitmore III. Only Eleanor's name. Not mine and Richard's. Not Mr. and Mrs. Richard Whitmore too. Request the honor. Just Eleanor. Like Ash had no parents, like he'd materialized fully formed into Victoria's world. I called Ash immediately. He was at the office, distracted. "Mother, it's just traditional. The bride's family hosts." "But we're paying for half," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We were paying for more than half. The rehearsal dinner, the honeymoon, the band Ash insisted on. Victoria's family was covering the venue and catering. But somehow their name was the only one that mattered. Does it really matter? Ash asked. It's just a piece of paper. Just a piece of paper. Sent to 180 people. Announcing to everyone we knew that the Whitmores had been edited out of our own son's wedding. I didn't push. I was so tired of pushing. 6 weeks before the wedding, I wasn't invited to the final dress fitting. I learned about it from Instagram. Victoria posted a photo of herself with Eleanor and her bridesmaids, all in matching robes, champagne glasses raised. The caption: "The perfect day with my perfect girls." I stared at that photo for an hour. My son was marrying this woman in 6 weeks, and I wasn't one of her perfect girls. I was something else. Something peripheral. When I mentioned it to Ash, he seemed genuinely confused that I was hurt. Mother, you have your own dress. Why would you need to be at her fitting? He didn't understand. Or he understood and didn't care. I couldn't tell which was worse. My dress hung in my closet. A soft blue Armani gown I'd chosen carefully. Elegant. Expensive. Appropriate. But every time I looked at it, I felt sick. I'd be wearing it to watch my son pledge his life to a woman who'd systematically removed me from every meaningful moment leading up to that pledge. Richard found me crying in the closet one night. Pull yourself together, he said quietly. We have appearances to maintain. Appearances. That's what we always maintained. The rehearsal dinner was my responsibility. Tradition dictated that. I planned it at the Harbor Club, overlooking Charleston Harbor. I selected every detail, the menu, the flowers, the seating arrangement. This was mine. Finally, something I could control. Victoria attended the planning meeting Eleanor insisted on. She smiled through my presentations, nodding politely. Then at the end, "It's lovely, Catherine." Really? But Alexander and I were actually hoping for something more casual, more authentic to Charleston. Maybe a low-country boil at the yacht club. A low-country boil. For a Whitmore rehearsal dinner. We did not do casual. We did elegant, refined, memorable. But Ash was nodding along, and Eleanor was beaming, and suddenly, my Harbor Club reservation felt pretentious. I pivoted. Of course, the bride and groom should have what they want. I canceled the Harbor Club, rebooked the yacht club, revised the menu. Victoria Chamberlain afterward. This is so much better, she whispered. So much more us. Us. She and Ash. Not we, not the families. Just them, the unit they were forming that didn't include me. I drove back to Boston that night instead of staying at our Charleston property. Richard stayed for a business meeting. I drove alone, crying somewhere around Myrtle Beach, where no one who mattered could see. 2 weeks before the wedding, my mother-in-law's estate jewelry went missing. Not missing, redistributed. The pieces I'd been promised would go to Ash's future wife, the heirlooms that had been in the Whitmore family for 4 generations. Richard's mother had died 3 years earlier, and her will explicitly stated the jewelry would go to Alexander's bride, selected by Catherine. Selected by me. That was the key phrase. I'd been planning to present them to Victoria at the rehearsal dinner, a formal passing of legacy, a welcome into the family. But when I went to retrieve them from the safe deposit box, Richard stopped me. Victoria already has them, he said casually. I gave them to her last month. She wanted to wear the pearls for the engagement photos. She'd asked. He'd given them. Without consulting me. The pearls my mother-in-law wore on her wedding day. The diamond bracelet that had belonged to Ash's great-grandmother. The sapphire ring that was supposed to be mine to bestow. She's going to be family, Richard said when he saw my face. What difference does it make? The difference was I'd been erased from one more ritual. One more moment that should have been mine. But I said nothing. I was so practiced at saying nothing by then. This is where things change. To make sure you're here for the rest of the story and the lesson I learned, please hit the like button and subscribe right now. Share this if you know someone struggling with regret. Stay with me. 1 week out, the final guest list arrived. I opened the PDF Victoria had emailed, expecting to review it one last time. My name was on it. Of course it was. And Richard's. Mr. and Mrs. Richard Whitmore too, seated at table 2. Table 2. Not the family table. Not even table 1, which I assumed would be overflow for family. Table 2, with Richard's business associates and their wives. People we knew. Professionally, not intimately. Not family. I scrolled to table 1. Eleanor and her husband, Victoria's siblings, Victoria's grandmother. All Chamberlains. The family table was exclusively hers. I called Ash. For the first time in months, I didn't modulate my voice. Why am I at table 2? At my own son's wedding. Silence. Then, Mother, Victoria organized the seating by relationships. You'll be more comfortable with the Boston crowd. The Boston crowd are strangers compared to you, I said. I'm your mother. I should be at the family table. You're making this about you, he said quietly. This day isn't about you. He hung up. My son hung up on me. I sat in my kitchen, in the house where I'd raised him, and realized he was right. This day wasn't about me. Nothing about this wedding had been about me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to Richard, who snored peacefully, unbothered by seating, charts and erasure. He had his table. He had his role. Father of the groom, successful businessman, respected family patriarch. No one was removing him from anything. But they were removing me. Slowly, politely, with smiles and apologies and explanations that almost made sense. Until you added them all up and realized you'd been systematically deleted from your own son's life. At 3 a.m., I went downstairs and opened my laptop. I drafted an email to Ash and Victoria. Calm, measured, explaining how hurt I felt. How excluded. How this wedding had become something I barely recognized. I asked, begged really, for a conversation. For acknowledgement that I mattered. I saved it as a draft. By morning, I'd deleted it. What would be the point? They'd explain again how stressed they were, how I was overreacting, how this was just wedding planning chaos. They'd make me feel unreasonable for wanting what I'd thought was a given, a place in my son's life. Instead, I went to my final dress fitting alone. The seamstress pinned the hem while I stood, silent, watching myself disappear in the three-way mirror. For days before the wedding, Victoria's bridal shower happened. I wasn't involved in planning it. Eleanor and Victoria's sorority sisters handled everything. But I was invited. Second-tier invited. The kind of invitation that's really a courtesy, not a want. I went anyway. I wore my best day dress, brought an expensive gift from the registry. The shower was at Eleanor's home, dripping with hydrangeas and inherited silver. 60 women. All perfectly dressed, all part of Victoria's world. I knew maybe 10 of them. Victoria opened gifts for 2 hours. Coach bags and Le Creuset and matching luggage sets. When she got to mine, a Christoffel silver serving set, $3,000 classic, she smiled politely. How lovely. Thank you, Catherine. No effusión. No special acknowledgement. Just another gift in the pile. But when Eleanor presented her gift, the family china that had belonged to Victoria's great-grandmother, Victoria burst into tears. Real tears. She hugged Eleanor for a full minute while someone took photos. This means everything, she sobbed. Everything. I sat in a chair by the window, holding my champagne, watching my future daughter-in-law treasure someone else's heirloom, someone else's legacy, someone else's family. Later, a woman I didn't know asked which side I was on. Bride or groom? Groom, I said. I'm his mother. Oh, she said, surprised. Like she'd forgotten the groom had a mother at all. 2 days before the wedding, Richard and I arrived in Charleston. We stayed at the Charleston Place Hotel, not at our property, because Victoria's bridesmaids were using it. They need a place to get ready, Ash explained. You understand. I understood I'd been displaced from my own home. The rehearsal was scheduled for 5 p.m. at the yacht club. I arrived 30 minutes early, wanting to be useful. The wedding planner, someone Victoria had hired without consulting me, looked startled when I offered to help. Oh, Mrs. Whitmore. We have everything covered. You can just relax. I sat in a chair and watched them rehearse the ceremony I'd helped design. Victoria walked through the timing with her bridesmaids. Eleanor adjusted floral arrangements. Ash stood at the altar looking happy, untouched by any of this. No one asked for my input. No one needed me for anything. The rehearsal dinner was that night. The low-country boil I'd reorganized my entire vision to accommodate. It was casual, fun, exactly what they'd wanted. Ash gave a speech thanking Victoria for making him a better man. Victoria thanked Eleanor for being the mother every girl dreams of. She never mentioned me. Not once. In front of 80 people, the groom's mother didn't exist. I excused myself to the bathroom and didn't come back for 20 minutes. I stood in the marble-tiled ladies' room of the Charleston Yacht Club, gripping the sink, trying to breathe. A young woman came in, one of Victoria's bridesmaids, and asked if I was okay. Fine, I said. Just needed air. She smiled sympathetically. Weddings are so emotional. My mom cried through my brother's whole wedding. She washed her hands and left. I stared at myself in the mirror. My makeup was perfect. My dress was perfect. Everything about me was correct and appropriate and completely irrelevant. When I returned, Richard caught my eye. "Where were you?" he whispered. I shook my head. Later he told me Victoria had given out gifts during my absence, monogrammed robes for her bridesmaids, engraved flasks for the groomsmen, a special necklace for Eleanor with both their initials intertwined. Nothing for me. I hadn't expected anything, but the absence still registered. Everyone at that table got acknowledged, appreciated, memorialized. Everyone except the groom's mother. That night, back at the hotel, I told Richard the first felt invisible. He was checking his phone, half listening. "It's almost over," he said. "Just get through tomorrow." Just get through tomorrow. Like my son's wedding was something to survive. I woke up the day of the wedding at 6 a.m. Hair and makeup appointment at 8. Ceremony at 4. I had my schedule, my role, my outfit. Mother of the groom. Second tier important. Necessary for photos but not for anything meaningful. At 7:30 a.m. my phone rang. Richard's number. He never called. We were in the same hotel room. I answered confused. "Catherine." His voice was tight. "I need you to stay calm." You never stay calm when someone tells you to stay calm. My heart started racing before he said another word. "I just got a call from Ash. There's been a change." A change? The morning of his wedding. What kind of change happens the morning of a wedding? Victoria's family has requested that we limit the ceremony to immediate family only. Very immediate. Parents, siblings. That's it. I processed this slowly. What does that mean? Richard was quiet too long. It means the guest list has been reduced significantly. They're worried about her grandmother's health. She's fragile, and they want to keep things small and quiet, less overwhelming. But we already have 180 people confirmed, I said stupidly. The ceremony is in 8 hours. Catherine. His voice dropped. It means you're not invited to the ceremony. The room tilted. What? You're not immediate family. In Victoria's interpretation, that means her parents and siblings. And Ash. That's it. James isn't even included. James. Ash's younger brother. The best man. Also removed. This is insane, I said. Richard, this is insane. I'm handling it, he said, but he didn't sound like he was handling anything. I'm talking to Ash now. But Catherine, he paused. Eleanor suggested you attend the reception. After the ceremony. She said it's a compromise. A compromise. I wasn't allowed to watch my son get married, but I could come to the party. Afterward. Like a vendor. Like someone who'd sent a gift but wasn't quite close enough for the real event. Where are you? I asked. At the venue. Ash called me down early. He's upset. This wasn't his idea. It never was. Nothing was ever his idea. He just went along always, with whatever Victoria wanted. And Victoria wanted me gone. I'll call you back, Richard said and hung up. I sat on the hotel bed in my robe, hair appointment in 30 minutes, and tried to understand how I'd gotten here, how I'd raised a son capable of erasing me on his wedding day. My phone rang again. Ash this time. I answered. Mom. His voice cracked. He hadn't called me mom in months. Mom, I'm so sorry. Victoria's grandmother had a panic attack this morning. The doctors said too much stimulation could trigger another one. We have to keep things really small. Just her immediate family. I promise this isn't. Am I your immediate family? I asked. Silence. Of course you are. Then why am I not invited to watch you get married? It's not about you, he said, and there it was again. That phrase. It's about her grandmother's health. We can't risk. I cut him off. I spent 11 months helping plan this wedding. I've been pushed aside at every turn. And now, the day of, I'm being uninvited completely. Do you understand what this feels like? I know, he said quietly. I know, and I'm sorry. But I can't go against Victoria's family on this. Not today. Her grandmother is everything to her. Her grandmother. More important than his mother. I understood then, with perfect clarity, that I'd already lost. That I'd been losing for months. And this was just the final confirmation. Will I see you at the reception? He asked hopefully. I hung up. I canceled my hair appointment. I sat in the hotel room while Richard attended our son's wedding without me. He'd argued, he told me later. He'd threatened to boycott too. But Ash had begged him to come. Please, Dad. I need you there. I need someone from our family. So Richard went, wore his tuxedo, walked into that yacht club, and watched our son marry Victoria in front of 37 people. I wasn't one of them. I ordered room service and ate it in bed watching HGTV. Somewhere across Charleston, my son was saying vows I'd never hear, promising forever to a woman who'd orchestrated my removal, becoming a husband while his mother sat in a hotel room, erased. Richard came back at 6 p.m. The reception started at 7. You should still come, he said, tiredly. People are asking about you. People. Not Ash. Not Victoria. Just people, noticing the conspicuous absence of the groom's mother. I looked at my Armani dress, still hanging in the closet. I'd planned to wear it to watch my son get married. Now it would be my costume for pretending everything was fine. For showing up to a reception celebrating a ceremony I'd been banned from. I put on the dress. I fixed my makeup. I became Catherine Whitmore again, poised, appropriate, perfect. And I went to my son's wedding reception like I hadn't just been destroyed. The reception was beautiful. Everything I'd helped plan, executed flawlessly. The band I'd suggested. The flowers I'd approved. The menu I'd consulted on. All of it perfect, all of it happening without me needing to be there for the part that mattered. I walked in and everyone turned. The whispers started immediately. Where had I been? Was I okay? Had something happened? I smiled and lied. A migraine. I'm so sorry I missed the ceremony. But I wouldn't miss celebrating these two. Victoria hugged me when she saw me. Catherine, I'm so glad you're feeling better. Her performance was flawless. Everyone around us nodded sympathetically. Poor Catherine. With her poorly timed migraine. How unfortunate. Ash hugged me too. I'm glad you came, he whispered. Like I'd done him a favor by showing up to his wedding reception after being banned from his wedding. I danced with Richard. I smiled in photos. I gave a toast I'd written on the hotel notepad an hour earlier. Brief, gracious, appropriate. I watched my son and his new wife cut the cake. Their first dance, the bouquet toss. I watched it all like I was behind glass. Present but not really there. Never really there. At midnight, Richard and I left. No one seemed to notice. Ready for more? Like this video, subscribe for the next story and share it with your network. Your comments fuel the conversation. I want to hear them. They sent me photos the next day. Professional shots of a ceremony I wasn't allowed to witness. My son in his tuxedo, smiling wider than I've ever seen. Happy in a moment I was deliberately excluded from. Some things you don't recover from. Thanks for listening. Tomorrow night, same time. The stories get darker.